he should deserve the credit for. Brian Grant told me this morning that I might be giving my testimony, so I'll try to keep it very quick in the interest of time. So please just give me like 5 minutes or so. All right, but most definitely, God's been great in my life. He's proven over and over again, that trusting in Him always makes the difference. For starters, those who open the Lord, won't, the righteous are never forsaken. So, but anyway, I guess I can start off with some encouragement via my testimony. I'll get this over quick. Very, very, very different story than an average guy. All right. In Oxnard, California, in March 14, 1992, I was born into a homeless family. And it consisted of my real mother, my 2 half-sisters, and I. We all had 3 different fathers, and all 3 of them left when we were born, for whatever reason. So I don't even know their identities. But anyway, the kind of type of homeless people we were nomadic. We were kind of drifters. So we basically went from city to city, going from shelter to shelter. We slept in parks and beaches, you name it, because we didn't have a roof. So this is all around California. Eventually my mother somehow saved up enough money so we could hitchhike / get a Greyhound bus all the way to Florida. Same story. It's very expensive to live there, extremely, especially if you're on the streets. You'd think they have it easy if you're homeless, but you don't. Every night you have to go by noon. Sometimes homeless people, when they wake up from the shelter, they get back in line, just so they don't miss the night. Moving on. After Florida, it's obviously expensive to live there, so my mother somehow got the idea of moving to Texas. And North Texas was the ideal because of the jobs, the Metroplex, and the countless homeless people there. So we moved to the Deep Ellum / Dallas area, and I remember Deep Ellum. As a matter of fact, years later, I went to do some mission work with my youth group, and that was some of those homeless shelters were the ones I was in. And I remember some of those, places. But anyway, I was there, and all around, North Texas, we moved from place to place, and CBS somehow got reports from churches or from shelters reporting that they let a single mother with 3 children in a homeless shelter for the night, and they, you have to report it. So they reported it over and over again, became a trend, and eventually CBS tried to take us away. In any event, we ran away or left secretly, and they finally caught up to us in Denton behind the Texas Women's University. There's a long-term homeless shelter there. This is all the way in Denton, so it's July of 1999. My mother had gotten an application for a really good job. First job she could really have other than a Whataburger. Basically the day she left was the day CBS came in, and I never got to say goodbye to her. And they took me away and one of my sisters away, because at that point my eldest sister, she was with friends. But anyway, they said I was going on a sleepover, and that's messed up. So I believed them, and went to foster care in Flower Mound, Texas, very rich and yuppie community. It's already been 5 minutes, God help me.
No time.
Still. But anyway, goodness. Backtrack. All right, July 99, I was taken away by CBS, and for my mother, never got to say goodbye to her. It wasn't until just about a year later, by the same foster family that I got adopted with, right? And it wasn't a really good story there after I got adopted. I won't want to get into the details, but I had the worst, probably. Well, not the worst, but I had it pretty bad from both parents. But anyway, it wasn't until 5th grade when I eventually realized that it was not socially appropriate for father to be the son, and that not everything I did that happened to me was my fault. So I ran across to my nanny across the street. Her name was Miss Pat. She was a great woman, great heart for God, and she encouraged me to go to the grade counselor, and I did. And counselor, She told me what to do. I called CPS, and this was toward the end of my 5th grade year, or the beginning of my 6th grade year, forget which. But then the caseworker came over that day after school. My parents lost their foster parents license. By that time, I was already adopted for 3 or 4 years. They stripped the foster kids away, but didn't take me away. And that's simply because my parents had guardianship over me. And I knew my parents didn't do anything to the foster kids because a big source of their income came from foster care. No, I'm not hating out toward foster parents. I met the greatest people in the world that are through the CPS system. So it's by no means am I trying to be a stereotype, because I've met some great people in that segment of society. But still, that same night, my father talked to me and my mother talked to me, and they said that they'll change and all that other stuff. They said that if I just lie and say that all the evidence that I had shown them and everything I had said was false, then everything will be okay. I wanted everything to be okay because I wanted to have a normal family and I wanted to be loved. And I had fallen for it. And the next day I called Miss Hawley, caseworker, and she said, "All right, Patrick, I believe you." And that was it. It's the end. After that phone call, they just dropped it. And a year later, my father started beating me again, started degrading me, pissing me out, all this other mess. And I just couldn't take it. And by that time, I was about toward the end of my 6th grade year or 7th grade year or whatever. So it was a while. It felt like an eternity. And let me go back to 6th grade where I gave my life to God. Let me kind of make this quick. In 6th grade, I had gone to a youth retreat. And this was an Assembly of God church that I had already gone with for about 4 years, 5 years. And it was really the first youth outing I ever had. As you know, that at that time, I was already going through hell over high waters. So I didn't really want to hear much about God. I hated him, at that time. And that night there was a sermon about being accepted in God's family, and always knowing without a shadow of a doubt that He's always there for you, and you don't ever have, to deal with, well, you have to deal with things in this world, but not alone. And I got adopted into God's family. Amen. And it's my Heavenly Father to this day. I can always trust in Him, and I finally realized why Pentecostal people are so happy about jumping up and down, it wasn't for a couple other guys. I figured out the speaking in tongues part where that came from. But anyway, okay. I gave my life to God. Same night, got filled with the Holy Spirit. And since that day, I had a hope, and I had a light to look toward. I went back home. I remember singing hymns as my father was hitting me. A lot of times that made him stop. And that was the power of God. Whether he felt awkward or not, that was still God. Amen. And I remember people at school could tell a change in me, because up until, probably about 8th grade, I was a class clown. I was just that guy that nobody liked, half the people liked, just simply because I was funny or had a laugh. The other half the people, I always threw out yo mama jokes all the time. Most of them aren't even funny. I'm sure when I get to heaven. Yeah. Anyway, moving on from that. It's all forget what I just said. Okay. I just said that 3 times. I kept growing in God. I kept growing in God, and I got to know more about His love and everything He had in my life. And eventually, my parents sent me to a children's home in 8th grade. And this is Pleasant Hill Children's Home. It's in East Texas. First time I had gone there. As a matter of fact, all the time up till probably 8th grade or 9th grade, I was depressed every time I went to the country. And because I was a city boy. Despite my homelessness, I had grown out of it. So I eventually fell in love with the country. To make a long story short, via 3 or 4 different people said the same thing to me about me being a minister. That God had called me to be a minister, and I need to quit resisting, and I need to just trust in Him. And 3 or 4 different people from different churches said that, didn't even know each other. and there were more details to make it, you know, really confirming. But still, I eventually accepted it because I eventually wanted to work with video games or computers. Eventually, I went back 11 months later toward my 9th grade year in high school back in Flower Mound, Texas. So I had gotten taken away from my first true family. To make a long story short, through high school up till now, it didn't get any better. I got stronger and bigger, but I still chose not to defend myself because I don't want to be like my father. And I just kept growing in God. And there was a period of time I had a bitterness, and I had just a lot of pain going through my mind, and that happened for a reason. God disciplines those He loves, and He never lets the wicked go unpunished, so both sides get their justice. But anyway, junior year, I left Flower Mound. Parents sent me somewhere, and then eventually Tyler, Texas, and to the boys' home. This was back last November. I had just honestly, mentally, just decided that I was going to, ride through it, and I didn't think I was going to get anything out of this place. Not Green Acres, but the home. And not many people there are Christians. So it was kind of hard for me to really be in a positive, encouraging and spiritual atmosphere and keep up with it. But God has been gracious, to me. So in December, it was the first time I had met Brian Grant. Last December at I was with the boys' home, with the family, at a Christmas party. I recognized probably about half of you. And that were either there or I've seen, before. So, thanks for pouring into my life, Brian. You've been you really have been a father figure to me.
Amen.
You definitely helped me out. God definitely put me in this situation, and it goes to show that, like I said, those who hope in God, they get their answer eventually. Sometimes it's not the right one that they